All right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Thursday, May 16th, 2024 edition of the Somerville Urban Forestry Committee, pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and 4, I think. This meeting will be held remotely. We want to welcome everybody tonight and to our new associate members and our new committee members, as well as members of the public. We'll start with introductions of the committee. And for housekeeping, Vanessa is taking minutes, I believe. Any other things before we jump into intros? Great. We'll go down the list of committee members by first name. So I think, Chris, you're up first today. Or Breck, sorry.
Yep. Hey, everybody. My name is Breck Miller. I'm the city tree warden. I oversee most of the maintenance of our mature street trees.
I'm Chris Dwan, committee member, local activist, very interested in making sure that our plans come together all the way across the city, from residents through to staff and electeds and everybody.
Am I next today?
Sure. Yeah, I think so.
I'm Dorothy Supit. I'm a member of the committee. I live on Spring Hill, and I guess I'm a tree hugger.
I think I'm next. Oh, go ahead, Marion.
No, well, you're
I'm like
Adele.
trying to do my alphabet here. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Grossman. I'm one of the co-chairs of the committee. And I'm excited about all things trees and native plants, and educating the public and hearing what the public's excited about.
My name is Marion, and I'm one of the brand new members of the committee and also a tree hugger.
Is that me next, or?
Sure, yeah.
Hi, Rob Van Dennebeel, new associate member of the committee, and been involved for a year or so now with a lot of the tree adoption, especially with Portico Brewing in Ward 2 of Somerville, where we've adopted a bunch of local neighborhood trees.
Hi, I'm Tori Antonino. I'm a co-chair of this committee, and I'm an ecological landscaper trying to convert yards to functioning ecosystem and on city property. Vanessa.
Thank you. Vanessa Bukili, Senior Urban Forestry and Landscape Planner, involved in planting trees around the city and various other ecological and tree-related things. Maybe Allie, you can introduce yourself next.
Hi, I'm Allie Bernard. I'm a certified tree keeper and tree lover, and here to advocate for maintaining and expanding the tree canopy. And I'm helping to plan Arbor Day here.
Awesome. All right, and now we'll open up to other members of the public, and something we like to do here, so that you can participate. We can promote you to be a panelist. That way you can share your face with us if you'd like to, no obligation, and you can unmute and say hello. And this is also, we'll kick off our resident concern part of the meeting. So Juliana, you're first up on the list if you want to introduce yourself, but again, no obligation.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Now you can see me too. Hi, I am a resident in Somerville, and I care very much about trees and increasing the city canopy and education about the environment and how to make the city greener. And I'm sorry I missed all the other meetings, but today I was here, so I hope I will be able to continue my presence.
Welcome, we're glad to have you. And Rebecca, if you want to say hello or have any concerns to share with us.
You do, you can raise your hand and I'll push your button.
And maybe while we're working through that, if there's any other resident concerns from folks on the committee.
I would share one that I think many of us already knew about, that we had and it's just mostly for the committee's information. We had or have a tree hearing for the removal of 2 calorie pears down on Somerville Ave near Target. And the community down there and around there were understandably exercised about, a tree that was large and mature and in bloom being scheduled for removal. But I thought it was a kind of a success of this new process that we've built, that Vanessa and Breck and I, at least, and Tori, I saw you chimed in on various email threads as well. We're able to provide information, and you never make everybody completely happy, but my impression was they said, oh, there's a plan, and there are people who are sort of talking about it and thinking about this stuff. And so far as I know, that has not been a terribly big deal. Breck, forgive me, I don't know if that tree hearing has happened yet.
Yeah, that happened this afternoon. And I think people were, once they heard sort of the reasoning behind why we were proposing to remove the tree, or trees, excuse me, people were pretty understanding. We did not receive any formal objections to the removals.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a remarkable change from whatever it was 7 years ago when I first met Vanessa. Some more calorie pears down in that area, and it was just really a lack of communication. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for this, this forum, and also for all the work y'all do citywide to help people understand the intentionality and the planning and thinking on these things.
I wanted to thank you, Chris, and I didn't see all the other folks that may have responded to the outreach and concern beforehand, but thank you for fielding that and also like trying to get more information, because it did really make it a lot smoother at the actual hearing and a lot less outrage. So thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I'd say Dorothy.
Yeah, I had a question. I guess it's a concern both with my resident hat and my committee member hat. I'm not sure. Last month when we met, there were, I think, 3 or 4 residents that were participating. One of them seemed quite knowledgeable and interested in the work that we're doing, but for what I understood was that she had applied more than once to be part of the committee and was not accepted. And so, one, I want to know if understood the situation correctly, but 2, if that's true, I guess I'm curious to know, what goes on. I don't even know really what the process is, and I'm curious to know, and this is not the person whose employer didn't want her to participate. I thought it was somebody else. So I'm just trying to understand that a little bit better. I tried to explain it to folks in my household, and they were like, what? I mean, somebody wants to volunteer and they can't help the city, the city. So I had no idea what to say to them, except I found it really confusing.
Well, I can start off, I think. I don't know who this person was specifically, but
yeah, I apologize. I didn't have a chance to look at the meetings prior to this meeting, so I couldn't check the names to figure out who exactly it was. She had blonde hair, if that helps.
That was Crystal.
Oh, okay. I mean, we are limited to 11 people on the committee, officially on the committee. We had never really considered associate membership before. We were trying to figure out how to maintain a youth member engaged, so sort of thought of it at that point. But we always welcome more people being involved, but we can only have 11 members on the committee. And in the last few rounds of applicants, it's been many more than we can put on the committee. So we have a panel of interviewers, myself, and then the co-chairs have been the interviewers in the last few rounds. We review resumes, and there's a new city process for all committees. So the goal is to interview at least three people, I believe, 2 or 3 people for each open position. So we have done that, and then we select the one that we think will be a good fit. And often they are all good fits, and we just have to think about what needs aren't already filled on the committee, and make a recommendation with that. And really, I think Tori's we have an embarrassment of riches. Like, everyone who we've interviewed would be a great value add to the committee. We just have to choose. So we make a recommendation to the mayor, and the mayor decides, if that's going to be sort of, I think I've explained the after the interview process during all the interviews, but the panel makes a recommendation to the mayor. The mayor makes the final determination of if, she agrees with that decision, and then we put it forth to the city council. So that's the general process, but we always encourage people, even if they aren't members of the committee, to continue to stay involved. And I totally understand why it would feel like not wanting to stay involved if you weren't selected. But there's only so many spots on the committee.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, I would add to that having a fixed number of people on the committee makes some things simpler, like quorum, and other things harder. Like when we get a whole bunch of interest, we wind up having to disappoint some people. And I go both ways on that.
Yeah, Terry, go ahead.
Yes, I want to go back if anyone else has any more questions on this item, I'm happy to also respond, but I had a question regarding the tree hearing. So Breck or Vanessa, you said we didn't get any people who wrote in opposition, and there was a huge thread that went back and forth on the Green and Open Somerville listserv and Prospect Hill listserv, and you guys were CC'd, I think, on all of that. And I don't know if that counts, if any of that counts as opposition. I mean, some people said they were going to write a letter, and I don't know if they did. Let's see. Did you guys get those emails?
I
saw
don't know
one.
about Vanessa, but I I didn't see any of that. I don't know if Chris ultimately deflected some of that, but the flyers that we distribute and what we post on the website and what we post in the Somerville Times all says pretty clearly that objections need to be submitted to the tree's email address. So, that's the protocol. And if it doesn't make its way to that address, then, or if it's not voiced during the hearing itself, then, that is not logged as an objection.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if trees at Somerville.
I only
Sam,
remember the email that Chris was forwarded to ask questions of us. I didn't see any
Okay.
direct emails from residents.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry, I'm just looking at all the back and forth and surprised that we didn't that wasn't okay. Yeah.
My sense from the thread was that a lot of people started out really, really pissed. And by the time that some explanations had been shared, a lot of that had really just, like, people understood. So it was very successful public engagement just outside this committee and in an email thread instead.
What's this thread, this email chain?
It was so there the way information gets around the city is through neighborhood lists. And yeah, so the Prospect Hill list is very active. There is a Green and Open Somerville list. I think those were the two that really blew up over this. And I'm not on, I think I'm on Green and Open, but I'm not on Prospect Hill, and somebody CC'd me in, and then it was the thing where I couldn't actually post to it because I'm not a member of the list, and so other people were, it was that situation. And yeah, this is a common source of confusion. I have seen it also with the police. I've also seen it with DPW, where if the city gives you a very specific email address and says like complaints must be submitted here, they take that seriously, because otherwise, like somebody saying something in passing on the street, it'll be like, well, was that a complaint or not? And some people that can feel disappointing after the fact if you felt like, you know, you expressed your disappointment or confusion in public and it wasn't picked up. But that it's a really consistent thing that, like, when they solicit, especially objections, they'll give you a place to do it. And if it doesn't go in there, then yeah, it's perfectly legit to say nobody actually raised an objection formally. Like, I forget which thing it was with the police in 2020 or 2021, but it was stunning that they came up and said, well, we didn't hear any formal objections. And it was like at a hearing about the problem that people had with something. It's like, well, nobody went down to the station and filled out the paper. So that's something we could probably do, I think, in the future, is to be clear that if you want to object, it says so on the notification and here's how you do it. I would add that if I got to go back.
But I mean, I do just want to reiterate that I really wasn't aware of any of that conversation going on, and I don't think Vanessa was either. You know, we're not trying to disregard people's, you know, opinions on these trees. I really genuinely had no idea. But with that said, there is, you know, a proper avenue for lodging your objections, and you know, that's the tree's address.
That's fair, and I think Marion's assessment was right too. I mean, I think we, yeah, extensive conversations had.
All right, thanks for that explanation. Any other sort of questions, concerns, comments on either topic that's been brought up here?
Can I just ask one more quick question? When you say lists, is that what is it? What do you mean by that exactly? Like, what format is it? Is it email, or is it on some other sort of an app, or?
These are mostly Google groups that work out to being like listservs, email lists.
Okay.
If you choose to engage on social media, there is also stuff there, but that's, yeah, I think I would say a Facebook group or something if a Facebook group blew up. But those are, according to my measurement, actually much smaller than the email lists. Like, the email lists seem to cover most of the city, where social media covers less.
And I think I've actually stumbled upon, Chris, you responding to questions on Reddit relating to trees pretty quickly as well. So I know that's an active platform.
Yeah.
So one thing that I want to say perhaps is that I think calorie prayers are not universally hated. So that's part, that's one thing, and they can be quite pretty. But I think that one of the things that I saw come out of that I don't know that you can do anything about it, but I'm curious whether you think you can, Record or Vanessa, is that people were like, you're going to take these trees down that are actual trees that we know are alive, that we know give us shade, that we know have survived in this area for a while, and replace them with future uncertain trees that may come later and may take a decade to grow to be the size of these. And that seemed to be sort of like the, like a calorie pair in hand is better than a gorgeous native oak that you promised me. Not saying that it shouldn't be cut down, and especially, but just raising that as a sort of like, is there something that we can do about that we can say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense, but also, anybody that was at the hearing itself would have gotten more context on sort of the reasoning behind the decision. In terms of, well, one of these trees is going to be very severely damaged, or likely to be very severely damaged during the construction process. The other tree really is in pretty bad shape and it's not likely to live for decades to come. So, the hearing itself provides a lot more context. It's not as though we're going around the city preemptively removing calorie pairs just to replace them because we can. But, in this particular case, there was a pretty good case for it. And, hopefully that was, well explained during the hearing itself.
Yeah, just to add on to that a little bit, like a calorie pair in hand may not be in hand for very long based on their branch structure. Those branches could fail at any time. And, this project will be complete in a year. There will be trees there. They will be under warranty. If they're not saved, if they for some reason any of them don't survive, they will be replaced until they do, and they're going to be in a much better planting medium than the trees that are there currently are.
Yeah, but I would throw in on that there's a kind of longitudinal conversation there, that if it's, and everybody starts from where they are and starts off with what's going on, I hadn't heard about this, and then they have to come up to speed, right? And that's good. That's one of the things that's universally true of activism, is that your new folks who show up for the first time, they don't know the context yet. And for me, having worked with the city for almost a decade now, I see that there's a selective process where when we engage on a certain street or neighborhood or project, that's the project that gets worked on. And there's this urban forestry master plan, this 400-page doc that mostly Vanessa wrote, that describes where we're going with our tree species mix. And a lot of conversations in this group over the years about like Norway maples, like Norway maples do a bunch of damage. And if we cut them all down right now, we'd lose about a third of the city's canopy. Right. And like, I think bringing people into the fact that it's not the first part of the conversation has been ongoing. And actually those two calorie pairs survived the clearing out of the calorie pairs on Somerville Ave to make way for the whatever the saucy acronym stands for, right? All the ones that were in front of like Ebi Sushi and the auto body shop, those went a few years ago, and these two stayed. It's a very selective process. So I don't know, the best I can do is just to share that history, and also to acknowledge and respect that people are genuinely trying to figure out what's going on and genuinely trying to protect something that they care about. So like, and I think that'll be true forever. Like every time somebody sees those brightly colored signs taped to the trees in their neighborhood, they're going to go, what the heck, and come storming around, and it'll be on us to share knowledge with them.
Great, thank you. Any other resident concerns? Yeah, Juliana.
Yeah, I was just wondering, what is the process to arrive to the decision of removing trees? Does it happen at the level of the committee? Does it happen at the level of the city? Vanessa, you are involved in that, could you perhaps explain what is the, the process of
Sure.
coming to a decision?
Yeah, so for public shade trees, they're protected by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 87. So Breck is in charge of protecting those trees as the tree warden. In general, the city removes public shade trees only when they are a danger to the public. So trees that are dead or decaying or for some reason are a liability where they have a high chance of falling apart and hurting someone or some property. So those trees are removed at, after an assessment by Breck or occasionally myself or other urban forester Malik. But usually Breck looks at them all regardless and, determines that they're dangerous. For cases like this, where it's not a dangerous tree, they have to go through a public shade tree hearing to consider the removal of these trees. So in instances where the tree is not a risk to the public, we try to figure out what the best strategy is for this space. So if there's a way to preserve a tree during a project and the tree is worth saving, we will do everything we can to save it. We will try to change the project to save the trees and have tree protection plans in place. If the tree is, in the way of something or is not really worth saving, like in this case, sort of a little bit of both, then we would proceed with a public shade tree hearing to consider its removal. The tree hearing has certain rules it has to follow. So it has to be posted, a sign on the tree itself. It has to be advertised in the newspaper. It has to be on the city calendar. There has to be a public hearing for it. And if anyone objects, then if anyone objects to the removal of that tree in writing before the shade tree hearing or at the shade tree hearing, then the tree cannot be removed unless the mayor or the city council approve the removal. So when we receive any objections, Breck and I consider the options and write up a report of our recommendation to the mayor for her consideration. So that's the general process.
Thank you. I don't know if in these resident concerns you little questions can stand with wider, bigger questions, because I had two sort of concerns that I noticed with the new trees that were planted. And I don't know if now is the moment to bring them out. Yeah. I noticed, and because I'm on a hill myself, and I noticed that all the new trees that have been planted along a hill and even more so at the bottom of the hill, they had all their ground being carried away by the rain. And basically they've been, some of them, they've been almost digged out again, because of the violent rainstorm. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention because with my tree that I struggled for 20 years to have, now I'm really building, like fortifications around, to sort of protect it from the rain. But I saw many other trees that were in danger of, not making it, through the year because of that. And I was wondering if the city could, I don't know, consider, doing something for this sort of precarious locations. So that is one thing. And the other thing is that we lost a lot of trees on Linden Ave. Ironically, I know two people, but one person in particular would like to have a tree planted again, but she cannot have it planted because even though there was a linden in front of her house that came down in a storm, because there is a street sign in front of our property. And I was wondering if there is a way, I don't know, not that is an immediate concern, but then I was wondering if there is a way to, I don't know, either move the sign and plant a tree or, there is a way to sort of bypass this problem.
Great questions. Thanks for bringing those up. For the first question about newly planted trees on hills, that is a problem. And when people like you have notice that and can like put a little put some bricks on the edge or some sort of fencing to help the mulch and soil stay in, that's amazing. Please do that. That's very helpful. I have not thought about this at the right time to put it in my contract. As you may remember, we have a planting contract where a contractor does all the planting, and I don't have an item for like installing a wall to not lose soil and mulch. So I don't have an plan in place at the moment to fix that, but please feel free to try to fix it on your own if you can. And if you notice specific locations where you see this happening a lot, if you could email me and let me know where they are, I'll keep them on a list for now and try to think about what to do. I don't know what the answer is yet, but thank you. And yeah, I've noticed, I know a few places where that's happening, but I might not have them all in my head. For Linden Avenue, if you mean by street sign, if you mean a no parking sign or a parking regulation sign, those I do get moved by parking department when it's the best place to plant a tree. Is this a different kind of street sign?
It's the warning that there is a stop sign ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those, for safety, I can't have those moved. They're there for a reason. I do have a bunch of places on Linden Avenue on my list of sites to inspect for replanting. For a while, all those trees fell over in that microburst. Like 2 or 3 big trees fell over on Linden Ave, so I couldn't replant there, but now it's been long enough. I think I can replant in some of those areas. So I will be inspecting Linden Ave potentially for the spring planting season. So it may not be at that particular location, but maybe some more trees on Linden Ave, spring or fall at the latest.
All right, should we shift to updates from the city?
Sure, yeah, I guess that's me. For city tree removals, the list that I sent you last time around, if they haven't all been removed at this point, they will be by tomorrow. And I do not have any additional removals beyond that at this point.
Great. And I can pull up our private tree removals.
Great, thank you. Malik did update the spreadsheet. Oh, I need to give our new members access to this spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But this is our private tree removal spreadsheet. You can see different tabs on the bottom for different types of permits and exemptions. The permits are separated by year and the exemptions is just an ongoing list. Exemptions are provided when the tree is either not subject to needing a permit. So if it's a tree that's under 8 inches that someone's inquiring about, if it's a tree that's under 24 inches and an invasive species, or is any size tree of heaven, then it will get an exemption, as well as any are these exemptions to like a hazardous tree or a tree that's like growing into a foundation or some sort of property damage reason would get an exemption, so they don't have to go through the permit process. It looks like there have been some new exemptions recently, one today even. And these are, mostly dead or dying trees. Looks like 41 Rose, 32 Clifton, 7 Bolton, 246, 248 Highland Ave, and 99 Thurston. Are there any up further, Leah?
It looks like, there's 41 Seawall.
Sewell. Yeah.
We were informed about the other one.
So those are clear to remove. And then I believe there are some new permit applications as well.
Same, this is the column.
Yeah. I'll freeze that top column, so, or top row, UFC informed column H. So I guess we may or may not have informed you about a lot of these, but different permits for different properties. 200 Innerbelt Road is replanting some trees. For these permit applications, for those of you who don't know, you have to apply for a permit to remove a significant tree on the property or multiple trees, and you're required to replant as many caliper inches of tree as you're removing, or pay a mitigation payment into the tree fund, or a combination of the two, unless you are an owner occupant in a 1 to 3 family home property, then you can you receive a waiver from that requirement.
Can you explain what that caliper inches thing means?
Caliper inches is the diameter of the tree. So, it's a measure of size. So 28 caliper inches would be some sort of number of trees. That's a combination that would be, you know, over 2 foot diameter tree, but it's probably a combination of various. And then
And that's presumably what it'll grow up into. Because obviously you can't.
That's
like
so that's we are counting up the number that they are removing, and they have to replant with that same number, like the day that they're planting, they have to add up to that. So if you remove a 28 inch caliper tree, usually you plant 2-inch caliper trees or so. That's what I plant on the sidewalks, is 2-inch caliper. So your number of trees and caliper inches has to add up to 28, not based on now times, not future times.
Wait, so if I remove a 28 caliper tree, I have to replace it with 14 trees?
Yeah. Yep.
But how would I do that?
Or pay a
Well,
fine.
Yeah, or pay.
Okay.
So it's discouraging you from removing a giant tree unless it's
Okay.
dangerous, and then you'll get an exemption.
Okay.
Or if there's a reason.
'Cause you can't plant a mature tree, like you just can't.
Exactly. Yeah. Generally the biggest caliper that we see in planting plans is about 4 inches. So you could plant, 7 trees that were 4 inches. But yeah, if you had one 28 caliper inch tree, you can't probably plant in the same place because there's a stump. So you better have a big property, or else you're gonna have to pay into the tree fund. But usually, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say it acknowledges that same thing that we were talking about earlier, where if you've got a tree that's 2 feet across, and you cut it down, you're not going to have that tree, a tree that large in that place in any of our lives. So, and even if you plant a small forest, so you either want to seed a small forest of saplings somehow, or the worst case, we get some money to plant a whole bunch of saplings somewhere else in the city. It's very much tuned to discourage it, and I wish we could have done more. Like the benefits, like the linear measure of diameter. The biomass of the tree and its various environmental benefits grow with the square of that. But it turns out that introducing math in an ordinance is hard beyond sort of a linear function. People were literally concerned that people wouldn't understand the square thing.
But you can see for a lot of these properties where columns I, J, and K say no, and NA, I forget which is which, but they don't need to replant or pay because they're either owner occupants or some other reason. Usually it's waiver eligible, I think it says, when it's an owner occupant.
And then you don't have to pay at all?
Yeah, at the time you don't. One of the amendment changes to the ordinance that we're proposing is that you do have to pay a little bit if you're an owner occupant, so 10% of what you would pay if you're not. Yeah, so 59 Dartmouth, 16 Broadway Place. Also, you can see in column F whether it's issued or pending. So some of these are waiting for additional documentation before they can be issued or reviews. Any questions about any of these particular cases that I may or may not be able to answer? Malik manages this process. Thanks for scrolling through, Leah.
Vanessa, perhaps I didn't pay attention at a certain moment, but so if you own the house and you take down a tree, you don't have to pay for it?
Yeah, you still have
Shouldn't
to.
those people be discouraged as well from taking down big trees? I mean,
Yes.
everybody should be discouraged.
There is that argument, which is a good point. But and why we are proposing an amendment to this that you'd have to pay something. But the main purpose of this is not to stop an individual who may want to change their property, but more like big developers who are buying a property and cutting down a whole bunch of trees. That was the main purpose of creating this private tree removal ordinance. And there's a lot of property owners who may not have who's to say what a property owner's right is. So if someone wants to remove a big tree because it's really causing them a lot of problems, maybe it's damaging their sewer line, or they keep tripping on it, or they just cannot afford to maintain it, or whatever. Like, yes, removing it is detrimental, but we just have a limit on how much we're gonna restrict someone to do what they feel like they need to do on their property. And a lot of it's also like, yeah, the senior community has fixed income. It does cost money to maintain trees. It does create challenges. So trying to keep that population in mind when creating these ordinances is important.
Yeah, I will say that I will just add to that there are some activist attorneys, some conservative activist attorneys who go around the country looking for cities that have passed laws that they think are overreaches on private property rights and suing to get them taken down. And tree laws that cities pass with all good intentions are frequently some of their targets. And the advice that we got in 2019 was that we couldn't just ban removing trees on private property, like that would just fail judicial review. The basis of this law is that wherever the tree's roots are, it provides benefit to your neighborhood and to your community. And so when you remove it, that benefit is being removed. And so we can ask people to do something in return, either paying into a fund or planting new trees. And then in the case of an owner occupant of a 1, 2, or 3 family residence, they're so clearly like engaged there, and that the balance slants more towards their ability to do kind of what they want. And the total opposite is a developer who just bought a vacant property with a bunch of trees and wants to clear cut it to maximize their new thing. We were totally sure we were on the right in that latter case, and we were cautious about the former. And what we think now is, and I think that this is correct, is that we could take the step from 0 to 10% of what we charge the developer. We could have it be a little bit. And I think that will make people think. I don't think that'll change people's minds when they're paying $1,500 every couple of years to maintain a big tree on a fixed income. But I think every little bit helps. And we're learning also, Somerville is a leader in this front. We should expect, I think, as we get more aggressive, to be the target of some of these lawsuits, which will be expensive and distracting. But yes, absolutely. I wish that we could do more.
I see Dorothy's hand.
I was just curious if there was the possibility, you know, at the intersection of someone on a fixed income of a certain amount, however it's defined, low income, using some HUD statistic, and a significant tree in the city, if there was any way that you could, you know, compensate the owner for the upkeep and the maintenance of that tree.
It's a great idea. And we have struggled to find a way to do this. The trick with doing it directly from the city is that it's real slippery to take city funds and use them to improve the properties of some but not all residents. That turns out to be super tricky. One way around that is to have a nonprofit that does things. We have talked about something like the Mass Saves program, except for trees, where I just got a rebate on some construction work that I did in my house because it was in a direction that the state wants me to go. You know, I think that's another great idea, because carrots are better than sticks every time. And if somebody says I'm removing this because it's expensive, I would love to have some of the funds that fly around from tree lovers to protect it. But we have not succeeded in doing that yet. Actually, where did the Mass Save for trees? We talked about that and then it just eventually went away. Was that on me to do something with?
That was my next question. If we talked about it, yeah, what are the next steps?
Someone needs to take it up as their charge,
Yeah.
and that can be anybody.
How would something like that work? Would you need to find like a nonprofit to be the one to sort of head it, and or grant funding or something? I mean, how would something like that get off the ground? And is Green Cambridge anything like what we're talking about? I know they plant trees on private properties. I don't know. I think they probably don't do maintenance, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and if it's Mass Saves, does the Public Utility Commission have to approve changes to that program? I'm kind of new to Massachusetts, but I've audited a lot of utilities, and with these kinds of programs, it was like a body of a Public Utility Commission that had to set everything from the rates that people are charged to what they would allow in these programs year over year over year. So I would assume that's how Massachusetts works, if it's not already part of Mass Saves. But is that where we would need to be advocating for, at the Public Utility Commission level, or at a different
I think it would be,
legislative place?
I think it would be hard to actually use Mass Saves directly. I was using that as like a metaphor.
Yeah.
Okay.
But because that is literally public money going into
It is, yeah.
houses. I'm not convinced it's a great fit, but yeah, Green Cambridge is doing what we find challenging, which is taking, like, actually buying and planting trees. We always kind of worry about that. Yeah, I think it's probably a nonprofit.
Didn't we talk about Groundwork Somerville, or raise them as a possibility in that discussion?
Yeah, they could work.
I'd be happy to chat with them. They're right across the street from Portico, and we do interact with and work with them on a few things, and we have a good relationship. And yeah, Green Cambridge is definitely a nonprofit, and I don't know the exact specific relationship, but I mean, the city and or the tree committee in Cambridge is very much aware of, and maybe possibly somehow in support of. I think I can find out more details, but it's a really good thought. I think both of those ideas of getting trees planted on private property within Somerville, and potentially having some sort of resource for property owners who could be incentivized to keep their trees were there opportunities for them to take advantage of that would alleviate any financial hardships.
And Rob, I'm
It
happy
sounds like a
to
good,
knock heads with you on that if you want,
That would be great. Yeah, that'd be, yeah.
if we're
Definitely.
allowed to under our rules.
absolutely. Yeah, and I think that definitely could be like under the outreach. It seems like an outreach topic. So, but yeah, by all means, dive into it.
Sounds good.
Any other questions on the spreadsheet? Otherwise, I can bring back up the agenda. And just want to
Um,
give a quick time check.
I
We're
just
in
have
an
one
hour.
follow-up, Vanessa, or someone, can you be sure that Rob and I have one another's contact information? Thank you.
Sure. Mhm.
All right. I think we're up to spring tree planting.
All right, spring tree planting. So Wagon Wheels, our contractor, we have kicked off our contract. I've been out marking sites. We have species selected. I shared the list of species with folks a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't know, not sometime between last meeting and this meeting. I think Tori wanted to discuss that a little bit, but also planning to start probably on May 28th or that week. So trees will start going into the ground there. I am still out marking sites, so there's a lot more potential for sites. Oh, good. Thanks, Leah.
See if I can awkwardly zoom in here. Bigger.
So I have lots of thoughts. But if someone else wants to start, I'm happy to yield.
I do want to have this conversation. I will just preempt it with, I asked you guys to give me feedback in one day, which I did not give you a lot of time, and I apologize. But that's what I had to offer. And I sent this list after that. And so Wagon Wheel has been working on it. The first load of trees they already received. I've tried to make a few minor substitutions for some trees locations that I knew I needed, and they're trying to find it, but they aren't even being able to find it. So there's not a lot of changes we can make, but I would like to, talk through changes you would have like to see.
Okay, well, if we know which ones they've received, then there's potential to change. If they've got all the, I mean,
I don't know which ones they received. And also, as I mentioned in previous meetings, they submit a list of species that are available in the contract. And I have asked them for different ones, and they said they would try, but there's no obligation for them to do that. So the list that they submitted was within the list of species available. And, they have a certain thing in mind when they put in the contract. So I don't have a lot of leeway in what I can demand. I can ask, but I can't demand.
Is that standard for contracts, or is that,
Yes.
can that be changed?
If I know before I write the contract how many of what species I want, I suppose I could word it that way, and then they put in a bid with the knowledge of what species I need. I don't really know that far in advance to be able to do that, but if there are certain ones that I, at least X number has to be blah, blah, blah. Not right now, bud. I can reword a contract, but I have to know before I put it out to bid. And yeah.
Well, maybe that's something we can work on for next year. I mean, I thought I responded I don't know if I
What are your
responded to
concerns,
them.
Tori?
Excuse me?
What are your concerns?
Okay, my concerns are about things like the non-native cherries. For example, that cherry that's blooming right now, that's like that bright orange, I mean yellow, not yellow, let's try it again. Pink is the okami cherry. So I see no activity on that. So the concerns are that we're planting a significant amount of these prunets, for example, that have human value, no, not pollinator value. And that's what concerns me. The cherries and the lilac and also the zelkova, the non-native plants, are the ones that are bothering me. And I think we can make certain substitutions that, I mean, I think would be. I liked that you have the dogwood, or did I make that up? I think a Cornus Florida. I think we should be trying Cornus Florida as a medium street tree. We try it.
Does
If
that
it
one have
doesn't,
spring does that one have like weird seasonal things or no?
No, but I don't plant dogwoods in streets because they have very low branching. Just don't see how that would work based on their habit.
well,
They're going to be poking people in the eyeballs.
yeah, I mean, many of our trees are like that anyway. The ones that are already planted, recently planted. So I took a picture of a beautiful dogwood. If you planted it in the shade, and if you limbed it up, you could make it in a way that it is passable by pedestrians. So we plant things and have trees planted in the sidewalks that are poking people in the eyes currently. So if we are actively training a tree and paying attention, this would be a possible tree. I think we should be trying sassafras. I think we should give pawpaw a try. I hope to be trying a straight up choke cherry. And I know they sucker, but so many street trees sucker because they're in really small pits. For a smaller street tree, I think we should be looking into the musclewood, the carpinus. Have that
Yeah,
on.
we plant a lot of carpinus. I know that one is
I have
weird
like
season.
5 on there because they're just a little bit tough to site because they like shade. So I have 5 on there. They've been doing not amazing, so I have to make sure I have the right locations for those.
And things like, the fall, I guess I don't understand the reasoning for sort of these autumn flowering cherries. I've seen them and I've not seen any activity. So I guess it makes me sad when we're really planting trying to really focus on pollinators and planting trees where I have not seen activity, and especially that the autumn blooming cherry, the okame cherry. I mean the Yoshino cherry. Is that the cherry that you observed that was having activity?
I think it was the okami, actually, one of the first bloomers.
One of the pink ones. Okay,
tons of bees.
I think we just need documentation then. I think, like, I have not seen a single one. So maybe that's part of it.
You haven't seen a bee, or you haven't seen a tree?
I have seen no activity. I have seen no flies, no pollinators on the okame cherries. So for me, it's like, well, if we're still looking for this, I want to find something that's an alternative to all of these non-native cherries that we're putting in, of which we have tons.
Does your concern spread to basically anything that says no in the middle column? If it's not native, you're worried that it wouldn't help native pollinators?
That's kind
Or is
of,
it a different, is it like a slightly different distinction?
it's putting in, yeah, my main concern are the pollinators. Are the pollinators and hosting ability for pollinators. And so the crabapple, for example, I'm not terribly, if we do non-native malice, I mean, it's so many of the malice are sort of hybridized anyway. I mean, that's not a concern. Concerns are so many of these cherries that I don't see activity on. If you have seen activity, I'd love to see again. And again, like how do we quantify this? I guess we have citizen scientists going into the, doing documentation. So most of it is trying to find this replacement for the cherries that the Japanese lilac that we have many of in our urban forestry management plan. So it's just looking at the amounts that we already have in the city and why aren't we putting in, 30 service berries instead of all of, take away 10 of the okame cherries and put in 10 more service berries. Just saying, in the urban forestry management plan, service berries don't even like make the list of the top 50. So my concern is just lack of diversity and continuing to put trees in that I have not seen activity on, save for the crab apples. So, and then just putting in, if we have, why aren't we trying gray birch? Is that something we can try? Like, I would much rather see somebody getting excited about the yellow leaves of a gray birch than an autumn flowering cherry that has no pollinators. So that's my concern. Does that make sense, Allie?
Yeah. So is it possible when we make these contracts with the city that we emphasize the desire for native trees, or do we already do that?
We do that. So our native plant ordinance requires 50% or more of street trees to be native. I have chosen, where'd my spreadsheet go? 65% of the trees to be native. So I'm very far exceeding the requirement by the native tree ordinance. I do in my contracts state that we would like to prioritize straight species and native species, native to New England. So that is language is in there. How they get there and how I count how many of each individual tree is not prescribed in the contract itself, but there is wording that, we prefer natives, we prefer straight species when possible. And this is 65% native to New England species. So I feel like the needle's always moving on me. I am also planting very few Japanese tree lilac, which is something we've discussed here before as not a very great species that may be somewhere being considered for invasive status. So I'm planting less of them. There are other trees, Tori, that you've said, hey, why are we planting these? Ginkgos and other like amber maple or some sort of, species that I'm not planting, except in very, very rare instances, but there's none on this list this season. I definitely hear you about service berries and I love them, but they like to be in very natural habitats, and a street tree well is not a natural habitat on a narrow street where there's going to be a lot of salt, and I don't think anyone's going to take care of Amelanchier or redbud. It's probably going to die if I plant one there, so I'm not going to sacrifice a tree that I am 90% sure isn't going to make it. I am happy to plant those in areas that I can provide a nice well for them. And I see that there's someone who loves their landscape and they'll probably help take care of the tree. I'm happy to put one there, even if it may not be the ideal location, because I think that it's going to get some love. But it's really hard to be a tree in an urban environment. And I am planting more native species than I need to. I am trying new species. I'm doing more red buds than I have before. So I hear you, but I also want you to see that I'm trying my best based on this
Yeah.
difficult situation that we're in. And also I'd like to say that the Pollinator Action Plan is coming out with a giant database of trees and shrubs and all these other species and their pollinator impact amongst, you know, the site locations that they like and all that. So once that plan is finalized, which should be this summer, then I can use that data set too. And if there's, you know, a cherry that actually has a lot of activity and other ones that don't, and they are, you know, similar conditions that they will tolerate, I'll absolutely prioritize the high pollinator value cherry or, you know, whatever it is. And I can't do them everywhere, but I agree. I want to have our street trees be good for the ecosystem, for the pollinators, and for the people. And sometimes I can't do it all, so I have to choose. Do I plant something that's going to survive, or do I plant nothing?
So it
Well, I will
sounds
say, I
like,
feel like it looks very diverse. I do like seeing a lot of variety because you can like love a certain tree, but then if they all grow up and then they get susceptible to a disease or something, you can lose, you know, like a huge amount of your canopy because you're not diversified. And I will say that like I think small trees are difficult to find. Like if you've got to like grow under wires or something. Newton also tends to put crab apples and cherries in those spaces because it's like better to put a tree than not put a tree. But it's hard to get a lot of species that fit the small size. So I will say I see some comparison in other Boston cities for that. But
Now, I wanted to say that I appreciate the very detailed response that you gave me bilaterally, Vanessa, and explaining a lot of your rationale for doing these things. I generally share Tori's sort of instincts. I also want more, and like I also feel too that to the extent, I mean, I know that there's some places where you just have, you know, we have power lines everywhere and all of this stuff, but like I also think at some point we're going to need to get really serious about cooling effects as well. But and the other thing I would say is like, you know, like I can get crabby about cherries myself, but to the extent that we are making the people of Somerville fall in love with street trees, the conservation value of that may be quite significant, because if you know that you have these, I mean, they're absolutely ridiculous, these trees when they're in bloom. And so it's the crab apples too, you know, like and so like I think that there's there's a pride that comes into that we should not undervalue.
Leah, I don't know if you can see Chris's hand.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to jump in on Vanessa's and support what Vanessa's doing here. And it's with huge respect, Tori, to your environmental knowledge and diligence and passion. And the task of planting 200 plus trees a season is not an easy one. And Vanessa, you're way out in front of what you're required to do, and by the native plant ordinance, which was as aggressive as we could possibly make it. And then, yeah, the spaces where, in particular, I'm thinking of places where our trees have failed, especially in the environmental justice neighborhoods where we just don't have very favorable conditions. Like, I would rather see a tree that blooms and lives than make a sort of empty statement by putting in something that we know is going to die, or something that we know people are going to snap the branches off when they smack them in the face. You know, I think this is a great compromise, and I think we have this conversation twice a year. And I think that it consistently, that those no's get smaller and smaller every year. And this has got to be a journey that we're on together. So I think actually this, thinking back to what we had years ago, this is way heavier and more slanted to the, like, I remember last year we talked about red bud as being dead bud. And so we were only going to have like a couple of them because we didn't know if they would survive at all. And now we're up to 10. And it's this slow, steady progress. And I appreciate all the diligence on it.
Yeah, Tori.
So Vanessa, when you were speaking, what I heard was that you weren't feeling appreciated, perhaps in my words, and feeling maybe feeling criticized and or attacked. That was my efforts. I appreciate the strides you have made. I appreciate, as Chris said, being on the forefront of enforcing our native planting ordinance and going more than the 50% required, even though it's more every year. I recognize how hard you're working. And instead of having this twice a year with one day to have it turn around, I really, 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 really would love to work with you for next season on finding that tree that is going to survive, like, and how we get that. Again, hop tree has come up as a possible candidate for something that's going to survive in a narrow street tree well. So I want to work with you before our next order, so we can kind of try these things that have come up, and that I've been throwing out, like, not try a flowering dogwood, we not try a pawpaw, perhaps we can try a sassafras in a shady location where it could become a tree. So how does that happen? How do we work together? How can we have a conversation before the day of? And I see how hard you work, and I really love our tree amigos, and you're a special person.
I can respond to that, or I can wait for you, Leah, if you wanted to.
No, go ahead. I think my comments are the same of what yeah, how I know as the SAP species subcommittee, we've developed a list of what we want to see more in the city, especially with consideration to what we want on the street, or what's, hardy enough for the street. And I think, sorry, yeah, so I'll say, let's talk about next steps and how we can make this a more, how we can continue to adapt this process.
Okay, sounds good. Tori, thank you. I'm sorry if I seemed defensive. But let's then maybe talk in the next month or so. If you could write the list of species, or maybe it was the same as the one that you sent in the email, and that's fine. I can look into that. I've never seen anyone have a hop tree available. So if you have a source for that I could point my contractor to, at the 2-inch caliper size, then I can at least float that. It is, again, they won't be required to make a change based on what they provided in the contract, and that was not in there, but I can look into that. I'm not sure about the structure of pawpaw sassafras, and I hear you on dogwood. And maybe there will be a spot where it's appropriate to try that. And I know you can change the structure of trees, but it does take work and maintenance. And we have, the young tree training program, which trees get pruned on a 3-year cycle. But other than that, it's sort of one-offs. So it can be a challenge for trees that want to be in a different structure than we want them to be, without regular maintenance. But if we can set up a meeting or email exchange, whatever, in the next few months with a specific goal for the fall, and I will in advance reach out to the contractor to see what might be possible. Once we come up with a list we're both happy with, and I still would like to say that, you know, having the spreadsheet list from the pollinator action plan will also be very helpful in sort of looking at what might do well in different types of environments and what would be very supportive of pollinators.
And I'll just throw this link in the chat. These are the list of native species we tried to establish, trees on the first page, and then shrubs and perennials and vines on the second page. So I think this is a good start. And I know, Tori, on our list was to make a companion list to this specifically for what we want to see more in the street. Because this was more for guidance for residents, what they can plant in their yard. So I think that is on our list to develop. Like, what do we want to see more of in the next 5-10 years? And so that, you know, every biannual cycle, we don't have to react, but we can say, here's this resource. This is our guiding, you know, this is our guiding document that's live and adapting. And I would love for the adopted tree, like people who are going out and doing the inventory and seeing what's dying, to be a part of this, you know, spreadsheet or reaction as well. Because I know, like, last year, a lot of Nyssa didn't make it. And that was really heartbreaking because I want to plant thousands and thousands of Nyssa. And it's like, why are they all dying? And so we tried something new this year. We were like, maybe they are a fall dick hazard or whatever, vice versa. So how can we keep building our collective knowledge so that we can, you know, keep making wise decisions in the future based on now all of these years of experience that we have, and observing what is doing well, and keeping better tabs on that. And to be like, let's go back to the red bud we planted last year and say, hey, how you doing? And to be like, doing pretty good. And then use that for, you know, not very scientific, but maybe we could make it scientific as well.
Do we do that now, or?
So as part of the Adopt a Tree program, volunteers as part of the committee go out to do an inventory to make sure the trees are still alive and kicking. And this is usually the following season, after, or season or two after they're planted, because they're watered by the contractor for the first cycle or two. And then we turn to residents to help water and care for the trees as part of the Adopt a Tree program. So currently, like, committee members go out to check on the trees when they, or I guess this year the tags are already hung, but we still go out to do the inventory. So that is a data point that we have access to for the past few years. And then beyond that, I think it's probably just 311 or trees that the city knows that are dead or dying. I don't know.
So there's a meeting within this year where we get maybe assignments and go out and check trees for those wanting to sign up?
Yeah, it is
Cool.
on
Okay.
our agenda. We'll get to it. And actually it's a good time check reminder. We're almost at 6 o'clock here. So we just have 30 minutes left and we have quite a few items to move through.
I have one final comment. I promise I'll be quick, and it's just finding a replacement eventually for Zelkova. They're becoming invasive. They're invasive in Virginia, invasive in Kentucky. It's a large tree, which, you know, maybe is an opportunity to get some Tilia americana in there, or just wanted to, and I don't know if we can plant them in the spring, but just wanted to flag that. And thank you.
All right. Should we go through sort of quick updates on the next few items? Pollinator action plan, is there any, I'd say any big updates? Otherwise, I'd love to keep moving through because I think we have exciting updates, especially around like Adopt a Tree and other time pending things.
Don't have anything super major. First pollinator action plan. I mean, there's a lot of events. We're trying to get outreach. There's been some cool information provided by the consultant. The plans should be finalized this summer, and there will be like a draft completed and a draft a committee meeting where the draft is presented to get comments back. Do you remember what that day is, Tori? I want to say June 10th. I think it's June 10th. So we'll send out a invite for people who want to come see the whole draft plan and make comments on it. Yes. Keeping it brief, I think I can stop there unless Tori got anything big. Tree preservation ordinance updates is we're moving through with legal department right now. Updating the updates before we present it to the council. So progress is happening behind the scenes.
Awesome. Thank you. McGrath Highway Green Space Support Letter. Who is that on bringing?
I guess I can share. We had fantastic response from the community. We got so for context, McGrath Highway is going to be grounded in the coming years, which is awesome. It's one of those sort of, from my perspective, sort of aggressive mistakes that we put across the city that divided the richer part from the poorer part. And once you start seeing it that way, it's hard to unsee it. The initial proposal from MassDOT was that they would basically replicate the width, but on the ground, and they would have a green strip that nobody would be able to get to in the middle. And broadly, the community was like, well, what if you actually made the road narrower? And we got some really good use out of that space instead. And there's people who are arguing to actually give it back to the city for housing, for parks, for whatever. And there was sort of broad consensus from the Yes in My Backyard folks and the PTA folks and from us. And so that's been submitted. And now we are all kind of waiting for MassDOT to respond. And the Somerville Alliance for Safe Streets, which took a leadership role there, is trying to get a meeting with MassDOT officials to say, hey, look, this is what the community wants. And it's a really broad swathe of the community. It's not like the environmentalists against the safety people, against the parents. We're all asking for the same thing. And could we please do this? So no clear update from that yet, but it was a really big success, I thought, from sort of a cross community effort.
I'd like to say something about this, which is that I think I agree wholeheartedly with what Chris said. I would still like to see more emphasis placed on the green space aspect of this, especially because the group has been organized by SAS and a lot of the groups that signed on to, even though Green and Open and others signed on to the letter as well, but like there is a significant emphasis in the letter on street safety, which is all really, really good. But I want to make sure that we really wave our arms frantically and express in very strong terms that we don't want to miss this opportunity to carve out as much green space as we can. And so I would love to see actually a letter from the Urban Forestry Committee saying something to that effect, that we believe that this is enough, and I don't know what is the approach, but that we believe, and like maybe it's to the mayor, maybe it's to, I don't know how to, I need somebody else's wisdom here, but I just think that this is like putting a bunch of trees in the middle, of multiple lanes of highway is not a good way to add to the canopy of the city. And with more efficient with more efficient use of the space, there's so many opportunities to create patches of green that we could plant a lot of stuff in, and that would be really good for the environment, for climate resilience, and for how people feel about their neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods, because I live right on this.
I'm trying to remember our conversation on this last month. And if we started drafting a document, or I think typically when the committee wants to send or sort of make a public statement, I think what's worked well in the past is if someone comes, sort of presents a draft to the committee, and either through a series of a working group or a few meetings, we can review it. But ideally having, or I think what's worked well in the past, and I think Chris is very good at this, so I've tried to copy that, and others can take different approaches, but I think we're often enthusiastic to approve something if we all feel good about it. So I guess I would suggest, if you're excited about taking this on, and if others are excited about helping you, drafting a memo and then bringing it to the committee next month. And typically Vanessa can send out a draft so folks have time to review it ahead of time and, start to prepare their comments. And then if you're able to present it to the group next month, and if everything looks good, or if we have a few minor edits, we can approve it. And typically we go through a roll call vote and have a unanimous, I forget, we usually have consensus, so I never have to remember the logistics of it. But if everyone feels good about it, we say, yes, we're going to put our stamp of approval, and we will send this either to the relevant party. We will publish it on our website. And I assume we have the power to send it to the mayor. I know I sent something to city council for our last, I think the last memo we approved. So those are typically the routes we take. And if that sounds like something you want to take on, that is awesome. And if others want to join you, it sounds like a working group.
I mean, I'm happy to do some writing and I have some thoughts, but I definitely would want to benefit from the professional skills and expertise of other members of this committee who actually have professional skills and expertise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like I have to think about this one more before I have formulated thoughts about it. Because part of me is yeah, we want more green space for people to access. Part of me is oh, you know what's really great to plant that's hard to plant around where people walk? All the trees we were just talking about, like pawpaw and sassafras, and they would thrive in an area that doesn't overlap with people. And so part of me is oh wait, it would be great to have a median where we can just plant super densely. But then that comes back to the sort of safety aspect and probably having visibility in this area. So I know I've probably received some link or information to this, but if you could share that around too.
Okay, yeah,
that would be...
yeah. So, and then Tori just shared the particular part of the language that made it into the main letter. Much of which I wrote actually. but yeah, because I mean I think it's yeah, so where's the actual letter? I forget how to get the actual
I think Tori just sent a link, and this is
yes.
A view.
There's the full letter. Yeah, that's not the letter quite as it was sent, but it's the final draft.
Great.
So for those in SAS, was there a deadline for this email?
Yeah, it went out. It's done. This letter was sent. And we actually voted last month, I believe, to voice our support for it.
Right, because it was going to go out before the next meeting, so we were we couldn't. So I think what happened was we were like, okay, reach out as individuals. Sorry about the Unisper Neighborhood Council. So I mean, if there's something that if they're still taking submission, considerations on it, we could draft something and send it to MassDOT. So
I think that a useful thing that this committee could do would be to urge the mayor to engage with this. The last time we, and I'm trying to be careful because I'm in so many different groups. I'm not speaking for any particular group. I'm just doing my best with a fallible human memory here. But one of I believe that when SAS talked about next steps, one of the things that we agreed would really help is if the mayor decided to take a leadership role on this conversation. One of the things that is clear to me is that if the community is speaking with many voices and arguing with itself, then the state sort of says, well, they don't know what they want. And if the community is very clearly aligned on something through the city council and the mayor, then we get state attention. So I think it would probably be helpful for us to say, in our role advising the city, that this would be a big one. This is a big opportunity. There's actually acreage. Like, I think that would actually help to just have us say, yes, Mayor Valentine, this is a big one for the city. We should engage on it.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I mean, I have already spoken directly to the mayor about this, just, as a citizen. But and I know I'm not the only one, several people have, but I think that so getting the mayor to really stick her neck out on this one, because she feels that there is strong support from the community and strong support from the people advising the city, and potentially strong support from, city departments beyond Brad Rawson. I mean, like, Brad is awesome and he is the point person for this project, but he's a road person. He is not a parks person. He's not a trees person. And so emphasizing this as a prime opportunity to increase green space and to provide and to grow more native species and more trees is the thing that I think is immensely valuable and that we can play a key role in.
Yeah, Juliana.
Yeah, would it be possible to share the letter? Because I tried to this letter that you just posted, and I guess it was submitted, or is it a draft?
Yeah, it's actually on me to put it on the SAS website. So, and I have not done that since I took it on Tuesday. So, and that will be at sas-somerville.org
Okay.
in the coming days. I'll see if I can find a link to it and put it in the chat here.
Thank you.
Great. So it sounds like this is sort of chapter wherever, and then the next chapter is, if the committee feels excited and ready to, voice our unanimous support for something bigger and bolder. It sounds like we need, I don't know if Marion, you're able to sort of lead that effort, and with others perhaps.
I am happy to do I'm a good writer. I can write, and I have some thoughts a little bit, but I think I would really first of all, I have a lot to do in the next few weeks, so I don't want to be 100% responsible, but also I really think it would be helpful to be able to get like a little bit of input from Tori, or a little input from you or from others, to really bring this in terms of like, why is contiguous green space with the ability to grow big ass trees that don't bump up against a road you know, 3 seconds later, like, why is this so important? Why is this so valuable? And why should we be looking for places to do that? And why is this like an opportunity that we will kick ourselves for generations if we don't do this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we don't need two-way bike paths on both sides of the road, which is what they're planning now, among other things. Stupid.
Yeah,
I
I
am
have
not
not.
as familiar with the project. Ally, it seems like you have some familiarity with the project. Are you part of SAS?
Me?
Ally,
Mhm. Yeah, thank you.
No, I'm not.
I thought you wrote part of this.
I did.
Oh, Marion.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
actually
Oh, sorry.
possibly, yeah, the letter is actually based on a bunch of bullet points that I wrote, and then everybody piled on top of it and did all sorts of stuff with it, and then I did one extra round of editing. Here's I just put in the chat a link
you.
to the presentation that was given on the 20 in February by MassDOT. It's really worthwhile to watch because you can see the extent to which they already get things and the extent to which they don't. And then there's this slideshow that you can see like how everything works, and you can understand why it's frustrating. And the mayor, by the way, had said that she was like, why are you doing all those little strips of green space? I don't quite get it. So like, it's not like, you know, it's not like the mayor is a huge fan of little strips of green space and we have to persuade her. It's more about the extent to which this becomes a cause for the city versus like, you know, we tried, we talked, we mentioned it a little bit, but it's messed up. Because just as we're leading with the tree ordinance and with, you know, like we can actually really demonstrate how to do one of these things in a way that becomes exemplary.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I need to get a little bit more
So it
well-versed.
does, yeah, it does sound like a plea to the mayor. That seems to, Marion, you said that, right? That was the summation. Or Chris.
Both of us.
So I guess, would it be worth like a little brain trust where some of us can read up a little bit more and then we come together and talk about it and then maybe draft a outline of a document?
That would be awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I think I can commit to a meeting. My like list of to-dos is long, but I think I would love to, yeah, show up and I'm excited about talking about it together and sort of hearing your experience and what you've, you know, learned so far. Are there other folks who would want to come together for a brain dump gathering of the minds if we can make a sub-quorum, sub-working group? All right, well, if it starts with us, that's a great start and we can bring it back to the committee. But would you mind initiating that? And Vanessa, if you can share my contact information as well, that would be great. Or I can put it in the chat too.
Okay.
One less thing to do.
Allie, why don't you join us?
Sure.
Great. All right. Let's keep chugging. Tree of Heaven removal for residents.
Well, this is a place where I'm very passionate. And I was the one who I think suggested putting this on the agenda. I know that Tree of Heaven's very invasive and very hard to tackle. And I think people trying to get rid of it in their yards can just make it so much worse, because if you just chop it down, you know, you could get 10 more, and they grow so fast. I mean, you can have them be like almost, you know, like 2 stories tall in a season. And I know my neighbor is a derelict property, and they've got like 100 trees of heaven. So it's like infecting the whole street. And last year I walked around my own property and tried to like rip them out. But then I thought maybe that's not the right thing, because maybe they're not like new seedlings. Maybe they're like, maybe it's the roots from the trees next door, and I've like made it worse. So this year we're thinking like we probably need to either try to dig it out and get all of the roots if we can, but if that doesn't work, we need to be prepared to like hack and squirt and like poison it. And I just feel like I'm going at this alone. And I don't want to make it worse. And I feel like a lot of residents would be in the same boat. You know, a lot of people have trees of heaven in their yard. A lot of people will try to like rip it out the way you rip out like a dandelion, thinking like that's fine. And they're really just, you know, perpetuating the situation. So I'm just wondering if we could like a couple things, like, can we make it an official invasive species, or like put it on that official like most unwanted list, because it's not on the unwanted list right now. Can we have
Certainly should be, but
can
yes,
we
sorry,
have
go ahead.
advice? I think it's been changing very quickly, but it used to almost be like a tree because of how big it was. But I even heard that I was happy to hear like if someone wants to take a tree of heaven down, they won't, you know, have to be subject to the city fine for it. But I do hope that like if we get requests to take down a tree of heaven, we're not just saying, yeah, go ahead. But the city has like advice, because you can't just cut it down. Like you're not going to get it. You've got to get all the roots, or you've got to poison it. So, you know, I do feel like we should be giving concrete advice about how to get rid of it effectively. And maybe even potentially like step it up, and like, can the city go beyond advice? Can like the city come out and help remediate it? Maybe they can, if like you can't go onto private property and help people. But I did see something come from the city even last week that said like, hey, if you have a rat problem, the city is willing to come out and work with you for a couple of cycles. And so I thought that that was very interesting, because I'm sure that they don't want to poison the rats, because, you know, you're worried that like the birds would eat the poisoned rats. So I'm sure that they're doing something else. But the fact that the city is willing to say, I will come out and I will help you with this problem, is something I feel like we should be doing for Tree of Heaven. And like you know, I read that I shouldn't poison or go after the trees of heaven in my yard until like June. Maybe that's just because like it needs to be having like the sugar, you know, like going into the roots when you put the poison in. And before that would be too early. So we have like, I have like a month. I'm going to research it a little bit more, but I don't know. I don't want to be going it alone, and I want to be doing it the right way. And I want to be doing it in the way the city recommends. And, you know, I'd love the city to be kind of like leading in helping people tackle this problem.
I agree 100%, and I will say repeat entire list except replace Tree of Heaven with Japanese knotweed. I feel that both of those, and I actually had sent a note to Vanessa about that, because it's like I am absolutely horrified by how vigorous the Japanese knotweed situation is. I have it creeping up on my next door neighbor's yard. So I'm but we need and I've seen so much contradictory information that I think that like, even just being able to make sure that people understand what is and isn't the right way to deal with these two monsters would be really helpful. Because like I've seen things, I've seen people post like even on Facebook or whatever, like, oh, you know, like if you so much as touch Japanese knotweed before like it has bloomed or whatever, like you're basically making it worse. And then I've seen other people be like, That's utter bullshit. You shouldn't be, don't let it live. What makes you think that it would make it worse to like kill it? So I don't know. I feel very ignorant and very
Absolutely, yeah.
helpless.
And like even with poison, I'm like, I feel like I'm at the point where we probably have to be ready to poison, but poison is a little scary too, because I just haven't really done that in my life. So I'm a little naive about it. And like Roundup is scary. Like it, it causes cancer. And so like I want, I'd love to be like the Tree of Heaven warden, like do my best to like get rid of it, but like I don't want to get sick from it, and I don't want to, hire people if it would make them sick by handling it. Like I want people to handle that effectively. And I also worry, like, does the poison, like if you really had to attack it with poison, like are you kind of also poisoning your water supply in some regard? Because these are just concerns I don't know. And as someone who really like tries to pay attention, if I don't know, I'm sure the day-to-day resident doesn't know, So I don't know. I guess it sounds like when you have maybe there's like we need to do a task force or come up with some advice where we all agree that this is the approach for certain notorious invasive species that are really difficult to get rid of.
Yeah,
So
I think I
lots of
saw,
hands.
I think I saw Chris first.
Yeah, I have two thoughts on this. One is that this sounds like if people are willing to go do the research and come back with a recommendation, it would be brilliant for us to like recommend to the city and to publish information. Like unfortunately, we are the help that is coming. We are the resource that the city has. And so if we look outside of this group, I don't think we're going to find a lot. And on the rat situation, through sustained public pressure, there's now 2 full-time employees who are tasked to have a program for rodent mitigation. And we colloquially call them both the rat czars, right? And there's a movement afoot to encourage the mayor to include a person in the budget for native plants and dealing with invasives. I mean, this year is going to be a hard push for adding staff since the schools are not level funded. But I think pushing for that staff person to actually have a program to support things would be great. But yeah, I think it starts with getting together the people who are passionate about this within this group and figuring out if there's any clear recommendation, stating it, and then we like endorse it with a vote. And if we think we really need staff, to encourage the mayor to consider that for the budget.
Vanessa?
Thanks, Chris, as usual. You said a lot of what I was thinking and probably much more eloquently. I agree. These are both huge problems. I hadn't even thought about the challenges to get rid of Tree of Heaven until you brought it up, Allie, a few meetings ago. And so I looked into it. I did find a really good video, which I'm posting in the chat from an extension resource about how to control Tree of Heaven. It's pretty short and useful, but that's sort of the extent of my knowledge is watching this video. Like Chris said, we don't have staff, unfortunately, right now that has the capacity to go out and do the work and help people, but I love the idea of having the committee come up with at least a resource to give to people. If you're removing a Tree of Heaven, here's some recommendations to get it gone for good. If you have Japanese knotweed, I've had people ask us, what do you suggest? And I don't have the answers. No one in the city has the answers that I'm aware of. In an at least not in an easy to provide the information sheet. But if we had that, we could definitely tell people what we recommend, and here are some strategies. So if you and others would be willing to write something up and start drafting something that we can share, I think that would be a big step, just having a resource available. And I don't think you'd have to reinvent the wheel. I'm sure there's other cities and other extensions that have have done the research. And then we can look at it, and yeah, unfortunately, we wouldn't have staff ability to actually go do the removals, but I think that's a good step. We do that with black swallowwort, and maybe you've seen the black swallowwort flyers that we provide. People can put door hangers, you know, with information about black swallowwort and how to try to keep it under control. I think that's a good first step for both of those terrible invasive species.
As as somebody who's trying to control knotweed on my own property, I can say that the extension programs definitely have the best information out there. So I think, you know, probably our best bet, you know, I'm not sure what UMass has, but that the Penn State information is very good. I think SUNY New York State has some good information too. So just figuring out something that we can refer people to might be the best option, because I think basically whatever we put together as a group is pretty much going to be paraphrasing what we find from the extensions already assembled.
I'd agree with that. And just before we have about 5 minutes left. Are enough people able to stay on for probably an additional 10 to 15 minutes, or does anyone have a hard stop?
I
See
can
one
stay
hard
on.
stop. Vanessa, where does that put us with 2, 4, 6? We're probably okay.
We just need 6.
All right, so we're going to be down 2. So I think that means we will have to hard stop. We still have a lot of things on this list. What's the most pressing? I think is Arbor Day going to be, do we have big updates on Arbor Day?
Yeah, Arbor Day, we had a meeting yesterday. The plan is to have it on June 8th, so it will be before our next meeting. But we can continue our planning with the subcommittee, the Arbor Day Planning Committee, and then share information. The June 8th is to coordinate with another planting that's going to be happening. So
Awesome. All right, so it sounds like that will keep happening via email and subcommittee. I'll say the same thing for Adopt a Tree. I heard Allie's interested in doing the Adopt a Tree inventory, because that'll be coming up. Is anyone else? I know Dorothy and myself are in the working group. If anyone else is interested, we have folks covering every part of the city, but doubling up is great. And I'd be happy to train folks this year. So if anyone's interested, just reach out to me.
Is there like a place where we keep all of our collective draft documents, these like memos or inventories, or if I took a first stab at this Tree of Heaven, you know, guidance, is there a place I should be doing it?
So typically drafts happen individually, and then once things are published, they are shared. But since we can't have working documents with the entire committee, like any working document has to be sub quorum to abide by open meeting law, which is a fun rule. So basically once something's done, it can go into our collective memory. But when things are working, they have to stay within working groups. So in the past, like, you know, working groups will have shared documents, and that's usually initiated by individuals.
Okay. Well, just to go back, if I was going to work on the Tree of Heaven, does anyone want to work on it with me, or work on Japanese knotwood in a pair? You know, we can feed off of each other.
Yeah, I think that should be added to the Most Wanted Weeds poster and initiative. And I know Kala started that and is working on it. And I have thoughts and things. I'll say I can join that too, but my list is getting long, and so I don't want to over promise. But feel free to include me, and I'll do my best.
Okay, so maybe if I draft something, share it with the chairs, and Vanessa? Is that the right way to go?
Either that or just you can just do it with a subcommittee. So I think I can be included in that, and then I would include Kala because she's been working on the Most Wanted Weeds memo. And if anyone else is interested in sort of becoming part of the invasives knowledge dispersion subcommittee, we can take it from there.
And then once there's a draft, you can send it to me and I can send it out to the committee for review.
Thank you. And with a few minutes left, does it feel right to go to approval of minutes so that we can get those on the website?
Very quick, if anyone, there's going to be a pollinator garden installed this Saturday from 9 to 1 on the bike path, Lowell Street and the bike path intersection. Wear
I saw
green
it.
gloves.
It's very so exciting.
Yay. And the person who's leading the charge from the MBTA says he's the sustainability department. He said it's the most encouraging project he's ever worked on in his career as the MBTA sustainability office.
That's awesome.
Does the bike path have a specific name?
That's it. The Somerville bike path,
Somerville Community Path.
Somerville Community Path.
Yeah, okay, all right, great.
Yeah, Lowell Street and the community
Path.
which runs a lot. It's next to the train tracks, green line.
Great. We're right at 6:30. I didn't have a chance to review the meeting minutes. Did enough people have a chance to review them to vote? Hopefully, yes.
I'll abstain.
All right, should we try and do a quick roll call vote for approval of minutes from these two meetings? Can we do both of them at once? Is that okay? All right, gonna run down the list. Breck,
Approve.
Christoine,
Approve.
Dorothy abstains. Marion,
Approve.
Tori,
Approve.
Vanessa,
Approve.
and can it pass if I also abstain?
Nope.
Think so.
No. Okay. I
mean,
trust y'all.
that
I
was fun.
also approve. Breaking all sorts of laws over here. All right, so it sounds like both of those meeting minutes can go up on the city website, and I will make a motion to, does anyone have any last comments?
Leah, did you see Rob's interest in Adopt a Tree?
Yes, I did.
Yep.
All right. Motion to end the meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Really productive meeting, and it sounds like we'll have a lot of sidebar chats coming up soon. So we'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.